Hello and welcome into this video. Together, let's understand the reality about the opportunity of the CSR26 plastic credit, why it is a revolution, why is it an asset that will have long-term value and represents a great opportunity for each and every one of us. So let's dive in. So why join the plastic credits revolution with CORSAIR Connect? Previously to this video, you have been introduced to the short presentation of CORSAIR Connect and what this company is here to do regarding the problem of plastic pollution. As a recap, let's review the offer here for you. The business model of CORSAIR Connect is really a collaborative cleanup by private individuals and companies. The way it works is simple. Customers purchase a plastic waste removal service, which gives the order to the company CORSAIR with their different factories and contributor network to collect and recycle a certain amount of plastic waste, which then creates plastic credits, the proof, the ticket that this operation of recycling was indeed done. So the customer receives this CSR plastic credit, which has a value on the market as it is meant for companies to use in order to offset the plastic pollution. So, in a nutshell, I like to recap saying that customers contribute to clean up plastic pollution, which creates new plastic credits. Order in advance with CORSAIR Connect to get a lower price. That is the incentive for us to gather, to unite forces, to become change makers, and to help CORSAIR clean up this planet. And what's in it for us? Of course, two things. The first one is a big impact in the environment. You will be able to say that you removed a mountain of plastic waste in exchange of your contribution. For example, today in 2026, with a few $1,000s, you can remove the equivalent size of an entire house made of plastic waste that will not end up in the environment and in the sea thanks to you. Second impact that we have is that we get the CSR plastic credit, which this is an asset, a promising asset, and we will focus on that today. So the question is why plastic credits are high potential assets on an emerging market. Why would you be interested to join this project? Not only to clean up the planet, but also because there is something in it for you, this precious asset that means a lot of value and abundance for you in the coming years. So let's look at this. First of all, we need to compare with the carbon credit market because it is the same concept applied to another type of pollution. Now, what is the result of the global focus of the world on carbon pollution over the last 10 years? Well, when we look at this article from the press on Reuters, we see that the value of traded global markets for carbon dioxide permits reached a record $950 billion in 2023. So it is indeed an enormous market of almost $1 trillion. That is for the carbon credits. So that's what's happening when the entire world focuses on solving a problem of pollution. Now, when we look at plastic credits, it's an emerging market. It's just starting, but it is in the footsteps of the carbon credit market. What happened for the value of one carbon credit? When we look at the price that you can find here on Google for the EU carbon permit, we see that the value in about 5 years multiplied by 40 times. So if you missed this opportunity back in 2016, 2017, know that now you have a chance to take advantage of a new emerging market, the plastic credit market. Now, why do we feel that it's the right timing in the global context today? First of all, you might know that the United Nations are now pushing for a plastic pollution treaty. Negotiations are ongoing. It's planned to be signed today in 2026, this year, which, whether they sign or not this year, is demonstrating an international will to tackle this crisis. On top of that, we have the World Bank, that was a major actor for the carbon credits, which has announced a $100 million bond for plastic credit projects recently in 2024, which is of course confirming that plastic credits are a true global solution. Now, when we look at recent articles in the press, we have this article from the Economic Times, plastic credit market to grow 70% with new recycling rule, hit 1.7 billion by 2030. And that was published in May 2025. That is, of course, concerning India, but this trend is all over the planet. So plastic credits is an emerging market. No one is talking about it today, but the result with the carbon credits was amazing. Now, the good news is that it's already mandatory by law in a few areas in the world, where first of all, let's talk about the framework. It is called Extended Producer Responsibility. That's the global framework that puts the responsibility of the waste onto the brand that has produced the waste. Now, the vision for CORSAIR Connect is that these plastic credits become globally adopted everywhere on the planet so that companies can now join in the fight against plastic pollution and reduce their impact. India. India already operates a mandatory EPR recycling credit system for plastics, but also tires, electronics, and batteries. The Philippines, under their EPR law, companies must recover or offset up to 80% of their yearly plastic packaging footprint by 2028, which is tomorrow, through certified recovery and plastic credit mechanisms. And then, last but not least, we have South Korea that operates a mandatory EPR compliance system where companies can fulfill recycling obligations through certified third-party recycling organizations. So here's just an example that already 3 major countries in the world put this mandatory by law. And our vision with CORSAIR Connect is that this will spread everywhere on the planet because it's only common sense that the companies who are producing all this waste must pay to clean up the environment which they have polluted. And the plastic credit is just that. Now, the future is driven by regulations, of course. What are the factors of value growth for the plastic credits? Why would you be interested to own your own plastic credits? Well, first of all, there is an established precedent with the carbon credit system. That's well established, mature in the world over the last 10, 15 years. It worked. Number two, there is now an international convergence on EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, a global framework that is pushing the world and the companies towards responsibility of their waste. And finally, we have long-term value driven by regulatory-backed demand and scarcity of the credit supply. There won't be so many plastic credits because it's hard work to collect and recycle and audit all of this process. So there will be a limited amount of plastic credits, such as those generated by the CORSAIR Group, and there will be an increasingly large demand from companies when the regulations hit. So these are the reasons why we believe in the future of plastic credits, and one of the reasons why you should be interested to own your own. Now, last but not least again, the CSR26 is included in the buyback program from CORSAIR. So let's look together what that means, because it's a major factor to reduce the risk for you, a customer of this project. What is the buyback program, first of all? It's a guarantee of demand for the CSR plastic credits coming from the mother company, CORSAIR. So let's look at it. How it works, CORSAIR will buy back its own plastic credits from the open markets at full price. Now, how is this financed? CORSAIR is committing 10% of their pyrolysis oil sales, which means the more factories, the more revenue is generated, but also 10% of CORSAIR capital. There are crowdfunding mechanisms for people to buy shares of the company, and also 10% of the gate fees payments, which CORSAIR gets paid money to receive the plastic waste in certain areas of the world. So basically, CORSAIR is going to dedicate 10% of their own revenue from industrial operations to buy back its own plastic credits and thus increasing the demand and very probably the price on the market. So it's really a win-win mechanism for CORSAIR and for the plastic credit holders. And really what that means is that for us, customers of the project, we have less risk regarding the future value of these plastic credits. Because even if regulations take time to emerge, the buyback program from CORSAIR will guarantee that there is a constant demand to buy this asset. Now, if we look at the estimations, and this is again my own opinion, it's not coming from the company, but what does that represent in terms of funds available? 10% of CORSAIR's revenue. Well, if we look at the estimation from the current company's growth, we can see that they have an ambitious plan to deploy factories all around the planet, and that by 2027, they should have about 30 reactors operating and recycling plastic waste. I can estimate at around 4 million euros the total amount of buyback program for 2027. Going to 50 reactors in 2028, that will unlock an additional 6 million euros. 2029, 9 million euros. 2030, 13 million euros. So altogether, if we take this amount dedicated to the buyback program, we should land at around 32 million euros dedicated to the buyback program. This is again my estimation. It could be more depending on the growth of CORSAIR. It could be less as well, but it's probably a conservative projection. Now, we could be asking ourselves, what is that going to do, 32 million euros into the open market? Well, there is here an impact that we have already noticed. There is a massive value factor for the plastic credit with this buyback. When we look at what happened in the past, for example, in August 2025, the company has bought back publicly $100,000. So 10% of 1 million. And what happened is that the market price doubled instantly on the open markets because it's still an emerging market. So a single purchase can increase significantly the value of the plastic credit. And of course, what we anticipate is that with 32 million euros being deployed in the next 4 or 5 years onto this very small emerging market, we will have a significant growth of the demand and of the value. That is what we can see with what happened in the past and what is the projection for the future. So the plastic credit markets are still emerging, and that is why the buyback program is a real added value to the CSR plastic credit assets. So in summary for this video, the future looks bright for the CSR26 plastic credit. Let me recap why you should be interested in owning CSR26 plastic credits in your portfolio. First reason, you have a direct impact into the environment, huge amount of plastic waste that you can be proud that you removed and that will not end up in our rivers and in our ocean. Then it is accessible for everyone. This is really something I love, and that is why I'm here making videos, because it's not just for big businesses and big corporations, it's also for the everyday Mr. Everybody, like you and me. We can partake into this project, have an impact, and earn from it. This gives you an early access to a promising market like we have seen today. And we believe with a great level of trust in the future of this market because there is an established precedent. The world just did exactly the same thing with carbon credits. We have long-term value driven by regulatory pressure. It's becoming more and more mandatory. And finally, we have seen that we have a guarantee of demand, of increasing demand coming from CORSAIR themselves with the buyback program. So in a nutshell, that explains to you in the most concise way possible that I can do for you today why it is interesting for you to become a customer. You can support the cleanup of the planet and you can take an early position on a future trillion-dollar market. So, in conclusion, your next step is simple. Book a call with the person who introduced you to this project so that you can ask your questions if you have any, and then choose your contribution and take action. Because it is by taking action that we build the world we want to live in tomorrow. Thank you very much.